Topic one, and we will be discussing independent and dependent quantities in different scenarios. So let's go ahead and first of all review what is an independent and dependent quantity. When one quantity depends on another in a problem situation, it is said to be the dependent quantity. And the quantity it depends on is called the independent quantity. Another note that you might want to make is that we graph our independent quantity on the x-axis. That's this horizontal axis here. That's going to be your independent quantity. And then we graph our dependent quantity on the y-axis. That's our vertical axis here. All right, so we need to determine in this scenario here, first of all, what are the two quantities? What are the two amounts? And then we need to determine which one's dependent, which one's independent. So let's look here. We've got the number of movie tickets purchased and the total cost. So we have two different amounts. We have two different quantities that can be expressed as a number. We've got the number of movie tickets and we've got the total cost. And in this situation, the total cost is going to depend on the movie tickets. So the total cost is going to be your dependent quantity because it depends upon how many movie tickets are purchased. So if I were to be graphing this, the number of movie tickets purchased would be on my independent quantity, and then my cost is going to be on my dependent quantity. So as I purchase a certain number of movie tickets, let's say I purchase one movie ticket, my cost is going to be a certain amount. If I purchase two, it's going to be a little higher. If I purchase three, a little higher, four, a little higher, five, a little higher, six, a little higher. So as I determine the number of movie tickets that I want, I can see the total cost. All right, so let's look at the next scenario. We have the number of hours worked and the amount of money earned. So our two quantities are going to be hours worked and money earned, and we need to determine which one depends on the other. In this case, the money earned is going to depend on the number of hours worked. So your hours worked would be your independent quantity and your money earned would be your dependent quantity. So let's go ahead and place money earned on our y-axis and our hours worked on our x-axis. So if I work 1 hour, I might get $10. 2 hours, I might get $20. 3 hours, might get $30. 4 hours, I might get $40, etc. Keeps going up the more hours that you work. One quantity depends on the other. The money earned depends on the hours worked. So in this situation, I would say if you have to identify the independent and dependent quantities, first identify the two quantities or amounts. Then decide which one determines the other. So which one's independent, which one's dependent. And I think it helps to make a graph to do that. So we'll look at a couple more scenarios. In this case, we've got the distance traveled and the amount of time spent driving. So we've got two quantities. We've got distance traveled and we've got time spent driving. So it depends. The time we're driving is going to depend on how long we've been traveling. So you could say that we were driving for an hour, then we went a certain amount of miles. So we could put our distance on the y-axis and we could put our time on the x-axis. So as we've gone a certain amount of time, as our time increases, our distance is going to be increasing. So it would be like time is going to depend on, or time is going to determine the distance. For number 4, we've got two different quantities. We've got the grade earned on a project, and we've got the amount of time spent working on it. So your grade is going to depend on the time spent working. If you spent 5 minutes working on your project, your grade's probably going to be a lot different than somebody who spent 5 hours on their project, for example. So I could label my x-axis the time spent working, and I could label my y-axis, let me make that a little straighter, your grade earned. Okay, so as time increases, your grade is going to increase. And then finally, the cost of an Uber ride and the distance driven. So you've got the cost of a ride and you've got the distance driven. So the cost of your ride is going to depend on the distance that the driver has to take you. So I would say that your cost is going to be your dependent quantity and your distance driven is going to be your independent quantity. So as your distance increases, the cost of the ride increases.